Hi there, welcome to the Eskrima Podcast. My name is Jason Enai. I'm an Eskrimador, and today I wanted to talk about there just isn't enough time, right? Like, I run into this situation, or rather this issue, I guess, with myself as well as most of my students, right? And so that's students here locally, as well as my students in seminars, my online students, and everything. And they often say, I just don't have enough time to train, right? So, maybe it's a priorities thing, because some people, they have other things that they need to do, they have family commitments, or just bad priorities because they'd rather play video games or go out to the bars, whatever it is. If we set those aside and we just say that's just a busy person, right, and make no judgment, the question comes to, okay, so how do you make that happen anyways, right? Because, if you want to get better, or you enjoy investing in yourself and the benefits of investing in yourself, then you've got to find a way, right? And most people, they do martial arts, and the best they can do is 1 or 2 classes a week, and that's okay too, right? Your progress is going to be, it's going to be at the pace with which you put time into it. It's really what it is. But it doesn't have to be always class time. My suggestion is you show up to as many classes as possible while still balancing, work and family and your health and everything else, right? But there's reading about martial arts, there's watching videos and things like that on your smartphone or on TV or on your computer or on the internet or whatever. If you have DVDs, if you have streaming and stuff like that's a good portion of what I tried to help provide for my students locally, as well as exclusively online, is providing hours and hours and hours of content. And the nature of learning martial arts in a way where you're supported by the content that's provided through my student and instructor platform is that it allows for you to review and review and review. So watching it once is usually not going to be enough, right? And then, of course, it's got to be done physically. I teach through the cipher that you can do a technique as a technique. Stimulus response, classical conditioning. Opponent poses a problem in the form of a punch or a strike, and you have an answer. That counter, whatever it is, it could be American Kempo's 5 swords. It could be, monkey grabs apples. It could be any number of techniques, right? And then, of course, you can do it in the air, like a form, right? Long forms were most Westerners are familiar with the longer forms of 20 plus movements, 30, 40. Even Tai Chi has like 105 movement form or something like that. So there's a longer forms, but then you see Southeast Asian martial arts, especially Silat, and you see these short forms. It's a short footwork, maybe 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 steps, maybe a little bit more, and then some hand movements, right? The United system of Eskrima Serrata it lends itself to that kind of training, right? And then, of course, you can do it in a repetitive drill with a partner, and you can try to fight with it. So, do it as a technique, do it as a form, right? Do it do it as a drill with someone, right? Try to fight with it. Those are different ways to train. And it's from a solo point of view, adding the techniques into your shadow boxing, or just doing them as a short forms, and then maybe finding a way to adapt that to a striking target of some sort, whether it's a bag or it's a post or a tire on a rope or whatever it is. There are ways to reinforce, as long as it's part of a continuum that includes doing the classical techniques and then bringing it out in reflexive flow work. So that's one way to do it, right? I know for myself, and I keep saying this and I can't say it enough, right? If you can visualize, and visualize is really not that strong enough word, or as accurate as we could call it. You need to hallucinate the technique, right? What I mean by that is you can see hear, almost feel an opponent's attack or multiple opponents' attacks. And you're moving through space, feeling your steps, feeling how you block, feeling the timing, the distance, the space between you and your opponent, feeling all those things, seeing all those things, hearing all those things, right? To the point where you're there. It's not as if you're there, but you're there, if you can imagine, right? And you're practicing the technique that way. That is going to basically put your training on turbo, right? The visualization with all those that sensory hallucination, structured imagination, if you will allow you to get subjective practice, right? Your conscious mind and your subconscious are there to help you and protect you and take care of your day-to-day operations, help you make decisions, etc. But when we talk about your subconscious mind, if you're practicing in your mind before you do a technique, after you do a technique, as you go to bed, or you're just thinking something through, your subconscious mind can't tell the difference of whether or not you're doing that for real or you're doing that in your head. So you're getting an element of practice from that, right? And that'll help you leverage your time. I always tell my students, and I do for myself, for the most part, I try to do 10 to 15 minutes of shadowboxing every day. Footwork, striking, and it's got to be a different fight every time. So maybe it's a stick fight, maybe it's a bolo fight, maybe it's a dagger fight, maybe it's an empty hand fight, maybe it's grappling, maybe I'm doing pressure points and vital area striking. Who knows? But I'm mixing all those things up constantly, right? The way that we approach martial arts training a lot, especially those of us who have a very linear and limited scope in our training, it's like a bartender that only ever has the same 3 ingredients. You go to order something and it's always the same drink, doesn't matter what you order, right? Or a cook that only has a handful of ingredients in the kitchen, and that's what you're eating. Now, for me, it's a bad metaphor because I can eat the same thing every day for every meal. It doesn't matter to me because food is fuel, right? But for those of us who are trying to get better, trying to learn more, right? We want to have more ingredients in the kitchen, right? We want to be able to do more. We want to have more than just a frying pan. We need an oven. We need a stove. We need a rice cooker. We need all the different tools, all the different things so that we can experience a fuller cuisine, if you will. In the same sense, martial arts, right? You need to train all the ways and practice all the ways. I'm not saying that you necessarily have to train in every art or many arts, right? Often there is so much dimension in most arts that if you look for it, right, you have an unlimited amount of things to learn, right? It's a common belief, a lot of the kick punch schools, and it's true for the most part, that you learn 3, 4, 5 years and there's really nothing more to learn. And that is true for the most part if your learning stops at what your teacher can provide you about the art that you're practicing. But we should always remember that our art exists beyond the people we practice with and the people that teach us. For me, I learned from my father and he learned from his teachers. And there's a lot about what my teachers have out there that I can review and I can learn from. And they've left those lessons available through old Super 8 that's on YouTube, through mentions of them in books and anecdotes by other teachers, to what other students of those teachers are doing and how that may inform the art that I love so much, right? So it's in going back to the original subject here of like, how do we get enough time to train? There's so much you can do, right? I often think it's kind of comical when someone says, I just don't have enough time to get better. I can only come twice a week, and I've seen, phenomenal growth and progress by individuals that only train in class 2 times a week. But I got this one guy, Frank. He recently he hurt his ankle in grappling class, right? And it was very unfortunate. He can't train as much, but he's been training recently a little bit more as he's healed up months later, right? But that guy, if you look at his Instagram, if you look at and you talk to him, he keeps a notebook, right? And he watches videos, he videos himself, right? And he's putting in the work. He's putting in the work. You know, the thing is that the people that succeed don't have a reason to not succeed, right? So they don't go with, oh, I don't have enough time, or I don't have this, or they don't, I don't feel good, or whatever it is, right? They don't have a reason not to show up. They don't have a reason not to succeed. They only have reasons to succeed. They have a reason to show up, right? They're the ones that are like, I could stay home because I don't feel so great, but I come and watch anyways, right? Or, I can't train. I have a student that trains periodically. He lives further away, but he's telling me about how, because he travels for work, how he'll do 15 to 20 minutes of training in his hotel before dinner every time he's out when he's traveling. 15, 20 minutes, do some basics in the air, maybe review some notes, try something, work through it in his mind, right? And it's that kind of dedication where no one can see that allows for someone who seems to not have that much, because there's been students of mine that have been far busier than the ones that complain that they don't have enough time, that seem to excel anyways, because they take these short moments here and there and they leverage them. That means that they're not watching TV, sports, whatever it is. They're not doing those things. They're not trying to entertain themselves. They're trying to invest in and grow and elevate themselves, right? Through regular practice and investment, not only in martial arts, but everything that they do. That ethic pervades their life in terms of what they might be reading, what they might be watching, what they are writing or recording, right? And with it involves martial arts. That's 15, 20 minutes of shadow boxing, keeping their notes, showing up 2-3 times or more a week for their training. Some of them will work out with a training partner outside of class. That's great too. But there's these people that I know, and myself included, have found a way to train. I have a reason to train, right? I have taken the opportunity to train whenever I can, right? And it shows, right? In the students that I see, when I see them, I go, it shows when the person's at least been thinking about it, working on it. It shows, right? There was a report or a statistic that I was reading, and it was based on because I play guitar. My dad taught me how to play guitar when I was like, I don't know, I must have been 12 or 13. My first chord, I think my first chord was E minor, and my second chord was G, right? But that's funny, think about that now. But I was reading about how to get better, and they said that people who practice 10 minutes to 15 minutes a day every day, at the end of a year, are in the top 10% of that given field, whatever it is. I think there's a caveat there. It needs to be structured 10 to 15 minutes of practice. It can't just be anything. You're not necessarily going to be in the top 10% of Taekwondo if you're practicing, but what you're practicing is wrong, right? Whether it's the wrong form, or you're not kicking and practicing kicking in a meaningful and constructive way, in terms of developing your kicks in Taekwondo, right? It still needs to be structured, right? But at the same time, 10 to 15 minutes, especially with shadow boxing, right? Shadow boxing, that's like fighting in the air. You see fighters do it all the time. Like they're fighting a shadow. We teach that in Karenza. You should be visualizing an opponent, right? And fighting that opponent. What kind of attack are they giving? How are you responding? What openings are they creating? How are you, exploiting those openings, right? it's an intellectual practice. It's a reinforcing practice of the things that you know, because you naturally do the things that you feel comfortable with or that you're focusing on, right? And also because it's the nature of shadowboxing, if you allow it and you're disciplined, you can have a decent workout where you elevate your heart rate for a short period of time and you stay moving, right? So, in closing, for this rather short Eskrima Podcast, you get what you give, you reap what you sow, right? And finding reasons to sow more seeds, right, is part of what makes a lot of people that are successful. When I look at some of my peers and colleagues in the Filipino martial arts community, both the ones that I've met, the ones that I've taught beside and trained with, I think of people like J. Jasper Pugao. I think about, I got the chance to meet Ray Dionaldo, right? I know worked with Grandmaster Michael Carone, right? And, you meet, people like, Master Jeff Finder, Ron Saturno. These guys are putting in the time. And they've been doing it for decades. They're always putting in the time, right? The others that kind of blip in and out, they have their contributions to make, but you see no real progress in them. But, especially with Master Pugao, like he's a prolific content creator, right? He's recording his journey as much as I am recording my journey through the podcast here, and everything on ITO's website and eskrima.com and everything. He's documenting his process, right, as he goes, for the benefit of others, but also for the benefit of himself. And because he has a reason to train, whether it's his own personal interest in development or it's a promise to his teacher, Grandmaster Sonny Umpad, he's a prolific creator. And while some of us really like his content and others be like, he's still putting in the work, right? The value of that to him personally has nothing to do with the audience, right? As opposed to someone who doesn't find the time to put a 10-minute video up, raw or edited, right? Just do the work, I guess. So last night when we were doing our first class of the year for January 2nd, 2024, right? They started talking about something having to do the connection of Catholicism and Christianity with Filipino martial arts, right? And I don't want to get too far into that because I'm not here to proselytize my faith, but God is good, right? They talk about the idea that salvation doesn't come from the word without work, right? Faith without work, right? Faith without deed does not bring salvation. It's this idea, right? And so what does that mean to us, right? Like, we can know about martial arts, but if we're not doing it on a regular basis, then we shouldn't expect regular results, right? We should expect below average, irregular results, right? So, get out there, do the work, right? Enjoy it and enjoy that process. And if you're not documenting it online, definitely at least document it in your own notes, in your own reflections. I have binders of notes, binders and binders of notes. A lot of it is hard to filter through until I get myself into that right headspace of where and what I was doing at that time. But I have binders of notes on Espada Idaga, Serrada Largamano, Cadena de Mano, Panantukun, right? Estocada, Contra, Dos Manos, right? Just all these different styles. And sometimes they reference videos that I have recorded in file names. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're just lesson plans. I have the recorded lesson plans for probably about 15 years of teaching in different binders. And sometimes I review it to see where I was. I look at the attendance of the students that were there. Remember where those students were at that time, because some of them are still with me 15 years later, like Alan Ewers, right? So, we work hard at putting in the time, and we get phenomenal results from regular, disciplined, dedicated effort. We'll see you on the trading floor.